What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Bullets, Barbells, and Barbecue. I'm your host, Brett. Chris is not here today. I got Matt Deuce here. I got Tanner the Head. And we have a special guest. We have Shawn Burke, the strength coach for the Florida Gators baseball team.
What's going on, guys?
In town, the road to Omaha. They made it. They made it. They slid in.
Yeah. Somehow we made it back.
They made it in by kicking the shit out of us twice during regionals.
We got our show partners, Elite Nutrition Omaha. Check them out at elitenutritionomaha.com. Use code B3 at checkout for 10% off. Go to the store and yell B3.
Get a free shaker.
Also have Rosewood Block to make the best cutting boards and barbecue. Check them out at rosewoodblock.com. Use code B3 at checkout for 10% off there as well. All right. So we got through that pretty quick.
I love it.
So you're in town. It's your second year you've been, at least here at the gym.
So yeah, this is our second year. My second year in Omaha. This is my end of my third season with Florida Baseball.
Okay.
2022, not a good year. Last year we were unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Didn't win it all, but we were, I think, second or third seed. So this year, not the same story at all. We snuck in, like you said, and then got out at the right time. That's all that matters. We barely made it over 500, which is what you need to be to make the postseason. And then, yeah, just went to Stillwater, beat up on the Huskers, beat up on the old Cowboys, and here we are.
I mean, in your guys' defense last year, I mean, that LSU team and the pitching for LSU was pretty
unbelievable.
I mean, he went first round. Wasn't he like first pick?
That guy, Paul Skeens, is special. He's already pitched in the big leagues. He's got his life figured out.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So where'd you kind of go back in your, like, where'd you get your start at?
Yeah, so I feel like every strength coach kind of has the traditional, like, stereotypical background. I played 3 sports growing up: football, baseball, wrestling. Wrestling was my favorite, and then I ended up breaking my leg. Missed 2 years of sports, 2 surgeries. So that was like a really traumatic time for me, and that's kind of what made me fall in love with the training process. And then I just stuck with football, played that in college, D3 football. Not a really good athlete at all, just love to play.
Your girlfriend's the better athlete.
Yeah, my girlfriend's the Olympian, so she, if we have children, she's going to be the genes. Yeah, I mean, every strength coach I feel like was a mediocre athlete, and then kind of fell in love with the training process. And then, yeah, like I said, I played football, but then professionally didn't really want to get into football. Football's a nightmare. It's you have no life. You work 24/7 for 0 job security. So that's kind of how I fell in love with baseball. I obviously played a little bit growing up, but it wasn't my number one sport. But from a work standpoint, it's the best. I mean, it's a high level sport where you're getting to play in front of crowds like you are in Omaha here, but you don't have the pressure and the lack of job security and the insane amount of hours that you do with football and basketball. So that's kind of how I fell in love with baseball. It's a fun sport. It's a long season, but it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. You can be 1 or 2 games over 500 like we were this year, and then sneak into the College World Series, and we got a chance to win it all. So, and we're playing as hot as anybody. So,
and so what's your progression from liking sports and getting into that? So obviously you went to college for that, and then where did you didn't just go from college to the Gators, I assume. No, there was a few stops in between. Yeah,
usually the traditional route is you go to grad school, you work on your volunteer internships, you get a whole bunch of certifications and spend all this money. The formal education component is really not where you learn how to be a strength coach. You learn it through your internships and your experience. So after school, I got my grad degree. While I was volunteer interning, I did a bunch of private places, personal training, and then I did a bunch of college internships. So I was at the University of Illinois for a couple of years, lovely Champaign, Illinois.
The Illini.
The Illini, yeah. Also corn country. So I was there for about 2 years. That's kind of where I got my big start with baseball. And then the guy I worked for there was actually at Florida previously to Illinois. So that's how I got connected to Florida. So, I was there for about 2 years, making $8,000 a year after I was a volunteer, working 2 to 3 jobs, working at grocery stores, personal training. I mean, it was a grind. It's one of those fields where you really got to put in your hours early on. But once you get to where you want to be, like myself, it's the best job in the world. I love it. I wake up every single day, and I'm excited to go to work, even if it's waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get ready for the morning lift and the morning run, or a game day or whatever, or the travel. It's the best. I love it. It's so
What's
much
a day
fun.
in the life look like if you're like, out of season and in season?
Yeah. So you made it the point. In season, out of season, totally different. Being the strength coach, kind of the off season, I feel like is my time to shine. That's where I'm kind of really taking the reins on the program. Essentially, we're working out 5 days a week at minimum, sometimes 6, 7. So usually that like start of the fall semester in August through Thanksgiving is really that busy time for me. We're always training in the morning. That's just kind of how we logistically do it with them going to classes in the middle of the day and then afternoon practice. So usually I'm getting to work by 5:30-ish to get set up to program to kind of get everything started for the morning. And we'll usually do 2 to 3 groups of guys. So anywhere from 10 to 15, sometimes 20 or more.
I assume after 15, it gets a little more hard to manage.
Yes. Yeah. You'll see in my field, depending on your situation and where you're training out of, kind of Florida in our situation, we essentially have, like I said, a large groups. Some schools, they do a little bit differently. So they're training 2 to 3 guys at a time, all day. We're very different. I personally like having the bigger groups. It's a lot of fun. I mean, we got music pumping. The guys are talking shit and
More energy.
Yeah, way more energy. It's way more. It's way more
I mean,
fun.
it's a lot about atmosphere.
100%.
that'd be way cooler.
Especially in the college setting. I mean, these guys are 18 to 22 years old.
Just alpha males.
Just being bros, being meatheads, being idiots. It's a lot of fun. Training 1 to 3 guys at a time is
Well, especially
so
in the
fun.
morning, like they come in, they're tired.
Exactly.
I mean, you get 15 guys and everyone's talking shit.
Yeah,
like
it's the
energy
best.
goes
It's
up.
the best. Yeah, I put their numbers up and they'll talk shit about that. We'll put the music on nice and loud. You got other teams in there as well, so they like to compete a little bit with them. So kind of go back to your question originally. Yeah, morning is kind of my time to shine. It's super busy. That's where everybody's getting their training in. And then that middle of the day is kind of my flexible time. So I'll do work if I need to, or errands or whatever, because everybody's in class. They're doing their tutors. They all have tutors. They're going to class. And then usually by like 1-ish, they're kind of getting to the field. They're doing their early work. They're getting their swings in. They're doing their prehab with the trainer and stuff. And then usually practice is like 2:30, which I'm around for. I'll warm up the guys and be around. And then by 4 or 5 o'clock, we're done. And then rinse, repeat for the whole fall. And then the best time of year for me is kind of the holidays. From Thanksgiving to January is the best because everybody goes home. So everybody's gone, and then being in Florida, I mean, I work a couple hours in the morning, and then I got my personal time. So I go to the golf course, I hang out.
Yeah.
It's really my time to get my personal time because the season's a grind. So by January we start at practice. Everybody comes back. We have like 4 weeks of a hard training block. Hopefully everyone had done something over the holidays.
Not just get fat.
Exactly. Eating Christmas cookies and drinking. But that's kind of my job to make sure we balance out getting good training in before the season, but also not killing them because you got to assume that nobody did anything. I mean, we know 18-year-olds.
Right.
But once January starts, we train hard, and then practice starts up middle to end of January, and then we play first game usually like just after Valentine's Day.
So what does your schedule look like here in Omaha?
So in season in Omaha, Omaha's crazy. I mean, we got here on Wednesday. That Thursday day is unbelievable. I mean, we wake up, we have media. I mean, we're sitting around the field, the guys getting interviewed and photo shoots and video shoots and all this kind of stuff. So we were sitting around the field for hours before and after practice. We practiced for about an hour. Which I think Thursday we actually went over to Creighton to get our team lift in. So they were very accommodating. They got like 20 or so racks, and we got the whole crew in there. So we practiced, we lifted. But yeah, just a whole bunch of random obligations. I think we had our opening ceremonies. It's just like a whole bunch of like busy stuff.
Yeah.
Which I mean, for me, I have to be around for. But I mean, the biggest thing for me is that team lift, the practice. But it's just like Omaha's crazy. It's just like media everywhere. I mean, we're getting off the bus and there's cameras in your face and there's people everywhere and the hotels they got all this stuff going on. But it's cool. It's obviously, I mean, way better to be here than sitting at home watching on TV. So
now when you're doing that team lift, like especially the week of the World Series, but I'm sure it's similar throughout the season. Is that kind of just like speed work stuff? Obviously you're not training and I guess I don't know what training protocols you follow. I know I know you follow some West Side or some Ed Cones, you know what I mean? But so you're obviously not doing max effort work. So are you just doing like speed work? Or are you doing do they have a bar on their back or are they just doing body? You know what I mean?
So yeah, I mean, we definitely train hard. I would say that that first day out of our weekend. So that first lift of the week is kind of our harder lift. So essentially in season, we're lifting about twice a week minimum. That first lift is kind of our harder, if anything, like a powerlifting comp would be like a max effort day. So we'll do like a heavier split squat with a safety bar, hand supported. That's kind of our main lift for that Monday or Tuesday. And then that lift before the weekend is kind of like your speed day. Like your dynamic effort day. So we're doing like a banded trap bar pull from blocks for speed, and then we'll do like a safety bar reverse lunge, and we'll use a tendo or some kind of velocity tracking device, depending on where we are. So like when we're at Creighton, we use the elite forms, but when we're home, we'll use tendos to make sure we're in the appropriate velocity zone. And then we'll do some push pull quick upper, and that's about it. So
on that tendo, are you trying like 3 feet per second? Is that what you're working?
For that reverse lunge, it's usually anywhere depending on the time of year, but right now it's like a 0.8, 0.9 meters per second.
Okay.
With a safety bar, so definitely a lot faster. So you're more like dynamic effort.
So yeah. So 0.9. So yeah. So not that far out from 3 feet, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like because I remember after I said it, I was like, oh, Louis always did it in in the metrics. So
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, like I said, the two main lifts is basically how we operate. A lot of guys are doing a little bit more, depending on how much they're playing and how much they like to train. But that's kind of like the baseline is those two lifts. That second lift is definitely that easier, lighter kind of dynamic effort type lift. So they should be feeling pretty good walking out of there.
Then do you rotate those so the next week will you do like a dynamic upper body?
Not as much, no. So a little different than like a powerlifting cycle. But it just based on the competitive schedule, so like our game schedule. So the weekend is kind of that most important part for us. So that's kind of why that day 2 is nice and light and easy. So
you said it was like a push pull upper body, just getting blood
both
flow.
Days. Yeah, both days for upper. That day 1 we'll do like a heavier bench. So our young guys will do just a dumbbell bench. Pitchers will do either Swiss bar or dumbbell bench. And our position players, they have a little bit more flexibility. They'll do to a 2-board. They'll do to or a shoulder saver.
Sure.
They'll do straight bar, or they'll do dumbbell. Just kind of depends on the guy, depends on how old they are, their training experience. So our position players, they can be a little bit more aggressive with upper training. Pitchers are a little bit more cautious, just based on being pitchers.
Well, yeah, and you're throwing a lot in baseball.
Correct.
You're a pitcher.
Correct.
Like, you got to save shoulders.
100%. And if you know anything about baseball, you throw 30, 40 pitches, your arm's hanging the next day. Yeah. So I don't blame them. It hurts throwing a baseball that hard. So we're definitely a little bit more cautious with the pitchers and the position players. They get after it. They like to.
That's what I was wondering. Like, do you have like some protocols in place to try to like preserve shoulder health and like keep that integrity?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is kind of our system and our consistency. We have our 2 athletic trainers who do a really, really good job doing their prehab and their recovery and stuff. But just being super consistent with training to me is the most important part. Not missing lifts, not missing huge chunks of training time. We're not doing anything too crazy, but we're training hard. I say, guys, we got 2 to 3 lifts. That's it. Like out of 7 days a week, especially those pitchers, they don't really. I mean, they pitch twice a week max. The rest of the week they're just chilling, and it's hard. Obviously, pitching is really stressful on the body, on the shoulder, on the elbow. But
during the season, it's usually once a week. Right?
Yeah, it depends on the guy. So our
weekend starters.
Our weekend starters, they're going to throw once a week, but they're going to throw hopefully upwards of 100+ pitches per outing. So after they're hurting, they're hurting. Mm-hmm. So we try to get a lift in either that day 0, that day after, or 2 days out, depending on the guy and the travel situation as well. I mean, sometimes the logistics are hard to get a lift in.
Well, that's why Omaha's so hard.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you have so many games, and you can't. I mean, if you have a stud like you had that stud last year, you can only pitch him so many times.
100%.
And it's a game of strategy. It's like a chess game.
No doubt.
Really.
Because you could have your best pitcher, but he just threw 50, 60 pitches the day before, but is that guy at 80, 85% better than somebody who's not as good, quote unquote, but he's 100%. So managing arms is the hardest thing about college baseball. Luckily, I don't have to do that. Our head coach does a really, really good job of that. He's been doing it forever. He's been to Omaha, I think, 9 times in his tenure here. So,
now, are there like collegiate rules on how you guys can run pitchers, or is it really the team? So you could actually just pitch the same guy every day if you really wanted to. There's no like collegiate rule that you have to sit him.
I'm pretty sure there's no rules. But yeah, good luck having a job after.
Yeah, no, I just know if there was actually a collegiate.
I mean, they did put in rules for junior pitching and for high school, I think.
Yeah, high school.
Because
pitch count rules.
Yeah, that I know of. There's no college rules.
At that point in time, you're an adult.
Correct.
You're
an adult.
You guys are making adult decisions. But
And we talked about the NIL. I mean,
yeah.
There'll be probably some union soon enough with like some pitchers union where they can only pitch. You know what I mean?
And from like a recruiting standpoint, I mean, it's known around the country who's good at managing pitchers. I mean, our coach Kevin O'Sullivan does a phenomenal job. I mean, he never is going to run a guy out there too much. He's always more cautious than aggressive with pitching, especially the caliber of player that we get.
Yeah.
So I mean, the caliber of player we get, I mean, they're all going to be drafted. They're all going to go to the next level. So, I mean, if we weren't good at managing pitching, they wouldn't come here.
Well,
their agents wouldn't let them.
You and I were talking like every player on your team is going to at least sniff pro baseball.
Yeah, 100%.
At Nebraska, three or four players are
right.
going to sniff pro baseball.
Right.
Like that's the difference between the programs.
Yep.
Like you're loaded every year.
With baseball, like we talked about, you never know. I mean, Nebraska's a really good club. They could easily beat us. So, I mean, we're
you have
talented.
you have more talent. But
Correct.
if they get an old established team,
Correct.
they can catch lightning in a bottle and make it to Omaha.
But what's stupid about baseball is anybody can win every day. I mean, it's a coin flip.
Yeah.
I mean, all it takes is a few at bats here, a few wild pitches there. I mean, a few bad outings. Like that's baseball, which is for me super frustrating because I mean I joke that I just do the weights and I have all my success attributed to how we do on the field. But I mean, I have such little outcome. Yeah. Of what actually goes on the field every day. So,
well, in your guys' baseball schedule, I mean, you guys were barely over 500, but you were 9-9 against top 15 teams.
Yeah,
I mean, like you guys had a brutal schedule. Like anyone who watched it and looked could see
exactly
this isn't a 500 team.
Yeah, we survived the best conference in the country. We have the best player in the country. I mean, we played. I mean, I think 4 of the teams that are here right now.
Yeah.
In the regular season, we played Florida State, we played Kentucky, we played Tennessee, we played A&M. So
yeah,
we played everybody. So I mean, goes to show you. I mean, we're super talented and got hot when we needed to, and then.
So is it 4 ACC and 4 SEC teams?
Yeah, 4 and 4.
By the way, the SEC is winning on the Jello shot counter right now.
Who is winning?
The SEC's winning.
Like
they're doing
total.
Gotcha. Total Jello shots.
Gotcha.
I think
we're in last.
I think Tennessee's leading right now.
Well, last year was that guy from Raising Cane's came and dropped like 30 grand. The guy that owns Raising Cane's.
Yeah, LSU has their huge Raising Cane's connection.
So kind of like circling back when you're doing your groups.
Yeah.
Because like I've done personal training. I don't do large group, but I've been training for years.
Yeah.
Like, but I know getting in groups, and as that size gets bigger, it's hard to manage, especially like new kids coming in that probably may or may not have ever really lifted structurally. Where do you feel like your sweet spot is that you can still fix technique with someone? Because I assume you're still trying to fix technique because you obviously power lifted.
Yep.
So you're trying to fix them, but you still got to be able to monitor everybody. I mean, what's kind of your sweet spot? Because like you said, like a group of 20, but that gets real hard to manage. Because that was always my thing. My biggest downfall or dislike of CrossFit was the size of their groups, and you could never manage to teach everybody.
It's probably one of the most important parts of my job is just managing all those people at once. I would say that's like the hardest, most important thing that I do.
And like a trap bar helps Because
For sure, yeah.
pretty easy to
I-
manage that. And then
I
do
mean-
you guys like box squat or do you free squat?
No, we don't do a lot of bilateral squatting.
Okay.
I will when we get our freshmen in the summer. So we'll have them for 6 weeks and we'll teach like a front squat.
Okay.
We'll do like a little bit of like a safety bar.
Because some of those are just easier. They kind of, like to me, like a box squat kind of almost teaches.
For sure.
And like like some of those. So yeah.
So yeah, front squat I would say would be a similar.
It kind of forces you into the right.
Correct positioning. So yeah, we don't do once they get through that first 6 weeks of their freshman summer, we don't really bilateral squat much. I will so for some like injured guys or developmental guys. So we don't do a lot of traditional back squatting. We'll do like a safety bar Hatfield or regular safety bar back squat. But yeah, we just don't do a lot of regular barbell. But going back to your question about the big groups, once we hit kind of January, February, we're really not doing anything new, I would say. So hopefully by, 6, 7, 8 months of good training of how knowing how I operate, they have a good idea of what it should look like and how it should be. So we're really not doing all that much new.
So there's not a lot of technique. So now are you starting to just change the loads or the intensities?
So we're training loads, we're changing workloads, intensities.
But exercises basically stay the same.
Some progressions. So like some of our hamstring progressions will progress, obviously. But as far as like compound heavy lifts, like main 1A, 1B lifts, we're not really changing much. But yeah, going back to the big groups, it's hard. If I was at a school where I'm training 2 to 3 guys at a time, I can be way more intimate. I can be way more individualized. Unfortunately, I can't do that. So it's kind of like you look at the standard bell curve. It's like some of the training is going to be too easy for some of the guys. Some of the training is going to be too hard for some of the guys. But you got to kind of aim for that middle chunk of the team. So as long as you're kind of getting that middle chunk appropriately, you're doing pretty good. So we do some individualization, but it's impossible to do as much as you can if you're training 1 to 3 at a time.
I did like you said hamstrings, because that was always the thing when like what Louis always talk about. Wes said every time I see injured NFL players, because their hamstrings are weak.
Yeah,
that's what he'd always get mad about that. I was like,
I pulled my quad. No,
but I think a lot of people don't train hamstrings near enough.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Well, the NFL guys tend to do the half quarter squats to get the more explosion in the quad, but then their hamstrings are weak and they have turf injuries. The turf monster grabs them.
And I guess I don't even know what's the main exercise selection. Like, I have some is it more like rotational stuff, especially with your pitchers?
So
is it
we'll do that.
So your big hitters, I guess, would be.
Yeah, I'll come back to the hamstrings because we can definitely talk about that. But as far as training rotation, if you look at traditional like strength and conditioning theory, they'll say specificity when you need it. So like in season, I kind of look at it the opposite. So we probably train more rotation in the fall and in the summer than we do in the spring. So for hitters and pitchers, right? Because it's all rotation. But we'll actually do way less in the spring because the amount of rotation they're getting in the spring is crazy high.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah, and that's where like the traditional, strength and conditioning education drove me nuts. It's like, why am I going to do more rotation, more quote unquote specific training to the sport when their workload in rotation is the highest?
Your general workouts would be more beneficial in season.
Correct. So my focus is what buckets can we fill that aren't getting filled by the sport, right? So by the sport that rotation bucket's full. Like these guys hit all day. I mean, we'll lift in the morning. Some of our like main like position guys, our starters, our grinders, will lift in the morning. They'll wake up at 6, 7 in the morning, come lift, go eat really quick, go right to the field, hit for an hour, go to class, go to tutor, come back, go to early hitting, and then we practice. And of course, we're going to hit during practice, and then some guys stay after and hit after. So they're getting hundreds of swings a day.
Sure.
So what is doing 3 sets of 3 on a med ball scoop toss or a shot put or some training rotation specific training going to do? 9 reps of a rotational med ball throw versus 100 baseball swings. So, and what's more specific, right? Swing a baseball bat. Right? So it is important, but I think you really need to look at what you need at what time of year. So we'll do way more rotation in the fall, and then training comes a little bit more general come the spring. So we're training hard for sure, and that comes from our head coach. I mean, he prioritizes training so much. So they know it's important. We train as hard as anybody. Last year we were the biggest team in Omaha by weight. So we were like I can't remember the exact.
That's funny. That's a stat.
Yeah.
baseball, every stat.
I shared that. I was like, hey, we're the biggest team in Omaha.
Well, I mean, look at them. Get off the bus. Like you get off the bus, you guys look like a freaking team.
Yeah.
You guys got a bunch of heavy hitters though.
Yeah, I mean, we got our number one player, Jack Caglione. I mean, he's a monster. He's 255.
Oh, he's the kid brought in yesterday,
Yeah,
right?
the guy from
Yeah, he's
yesterday.
freaking huge.
He's an absolute monster. I mean, he should play football. He's a Greek god. He's a freak. He's fun to train. He works his ass off. Strong as an ox. I mean, he loves to train. He absolutely loves
He's going to be like a top 5 pick.
Yeah, he'll be 100% a first rounder. I mean, it depends on what projection you looked at,
Yeah.
but I mean, I would think top 5. So he'll make some good money. But he loves to train. I mean, he crushes it. I mean, he does BFR twice a week, gets a huge pump twice a week. He loves it. So makes my job way easier.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say with the big groups, I'm sure you have some players that have stepped up and are like they're helping everyone else too.
For sure. There's the leaders who have been around and kind of know what it should look like, and they help out. But for me, like I said, that summer where I have all my freshmen in, it's just me and the freshmen. It's like anywhere from 8 to 12, maybe 15 tops. So it's not necessarily a hard training block, but it's like they're learning how I do things, how it should look like, the certain things that we really prioritize. So like I said, we do a ton of safety bar stuff, kind of how I sprint guys, how we do our speed work, all that kind of stuff. They're learning. So by this time of year, they know how it should look. So when we go over to Creighton and use somebody else's facility, they don't look like idiots. They look like they kind of know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, our older guys, they do a really good job of helping me out. So
You're kind of at the pinnacle of college baseball. I mean, you're at the pinnacle. You're at the top. Is there anywhere else you want to go, or are you? I mean, you're pretty young.
Yeah, I'm 32. I'm young for doing this job. I think if anything, maybe like a Major League Baseball job, but honestly, like that schedule is awful. Like I was complaining to you about our schedule yesterday and how long it is, but I mean,
162 games.
Yeah.
2 games with the travel across the country. I mean, it is nonstop. And I was talking to I think our trainer a couple weeks ago. I was thinking like, okay, we start in February. They start spring training around the same time. So we start a little bit earlier. Our season this is the latest it can go, right? They're not even at their all-star break.
No.
So they're going all the way through June, all the way through July, August, September, potentially October.
Yeah.
And then if you're in the last few games of the World Series,
So
you're
basically
in
another 6 months
November.
or 5 months that you're going to
November.
be.
So
Yeah.
we will finish our summer with our freshmen. We'll finish our whole 6 to 7 weeks, which is super annoying. The college schedule is super annoying. I get about 6 to 7 weeks of a true off season. That's it. Out of the 52 weeks, I get 6 to 7 weeks of it's just me. They're doing minimal at the field. Everybody is on campus. I have full control of what's going on, and that's it. Then they do fall ball. Then they go home. Then it's season. So that's where college can be tough because you really have. It's like, hey, you got to get these guys right in 6 or 7 weeks. It's like, okay,
Cool.
Don't hurt anybody, but train them hard, right?
Well, and then you have them after holiday break. You have to like get them back into shape.
Get them
real
back
quick.
into shape.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's 18 years old, and they're going back home. They're reuniting with their high school friends. They're going out and drinking all the time. They're being social. They're not in school. They have no structure. So, I mean, obviously the guys who want it, they're going to do their work. Mm-hmm. But professionally, I have to assume that nobody did anything. Because if I come back and say, hey, we're going right back to where we were, somebody's going to get hurt.
Yep.
So, and that does usually always come back kind of that first speed work, our sprint day that we do, I'm always super nervous. And obviously I mitigate how we train, right? I'm mitigating what we're doing. So I'm not, putting guys at super high risk, but I'm still nervous. Like we still need to do something, but I'm like, please nobody get hurt. Like we're going to warm up really good. The day before I'm like, go to sleep, eat, like don't be doing anything dumb. We got 3 to 4 speed days before practice. Like just please, please nobody get hurt. And honestly, last year there was a few of our older guys who always have nagging hamstrings, some of our pitchers. And I said, hey, we're not doing anything today.
More hamstring work, yo.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I could talk about that for days, but, those few pitchers, those older guys who every January, I mean, we're not even going at 100%. We're not even doing like true opening up our max velocity speed work. They just always get nagging hamstrings. So this past year, I was like, they're seniors. I'm like, hey guys, like we're not testing. We're not we're not doing that.
We know where you're at.
We know where you're at, and you're a pitcher. So it is important for pitchers, but it's not the end all be all. So yeah, kind of back to your point is I got a 3 to 4 weeks in January to say, hey, let's get some stuff in, but let's not kill you because we got season coming up and it's super long. So it's definitely a balancing act. Every time I program, it's like, oh, too much. No, too little. No, too much. so it's a process.
When you go end of season, and you and I talked a little bit with the NIL stuff.
Yep.
And the transfer portal.
Yep.
Is it just like pins and needles you're sitting on waiting for the next year to know who's going to come back? You're like, hey, like I've been working with this kid for like 2 years. Like he's a star pitcher.
Yep.
You know. Now, obviously, Florida's got a good track record of coming to Omaha, Florida. So I would hope that a lot of kids want to stay there. But like we talked about, you know, oh, hey, you know, so-and-so called me up and offered me this amount of money. So see you guys later. Like
the reality of it now.
So is it just pins and needles while you're waiting to see who's going to come back? Or do you have a good feel of who's going to, you know the guys who are.
You have an idea. The biggest one is to the draft. So your draft eligible sophomores, usually your draft eligible junior. So we have a few draft eligible sophomores where you're like, hey, they could come back, they could sign, you don't know. Usually the guys who leave on their own volition, you kind of know. We've had a few guys leave already, and that's not a huge surprise. But going back to last year, we lost, I think, 7 or 8 of our bench guys, and we went to the College World Series finals. Like, it's just how it is now. Like,
and it's got to be stressful as like the head coach.
Stressful. Yeah, roster management is such a pain now. And when we were on the road for our super regional at Clemson, we came back on Monday afternoon. And I think Monday afternoon, and then we left for Omaha on Wednesday. So in that short, like day and a half period, we had like 5 or 6 recruits from the transfer portal. So like literally they like got there before we even returned to Gainesville. They were waiting, and then we had to give them tours, and the coach is taking them out to dinner. So it literally never stops.
So do you think with a program like Florida, is it still the clout of what they've done, or is it more money still? Do the kids still want to come there because they got the chance to go to the World Series?
It's both. I think it's a shift in what they want. Historically, it was I want to play in the SEC. I want to play in for the big crowds. I want to play for coaches who are going to develop me for the next level. I want to play for the logo on my chest. You know, those big time premier programs. I think that's starting to shift a little bit. I really do. I think it's becoming a lot about money.
Well, most baseball players aren't on full scholarship.
Correct.
They're all partials, right?
There's 11.7 scholarships for 35, 36-ish spots, which is the lowest ratio in college athletics.
Right.
So
that's the SEC, or that's across the board?
Across the board.
NCAA.
Okay.
So we have the least amount of scholarships.
So that does make money. I mean, it is going to automatically prioritize money if they can get paid.
Yeah. And I don't blame them. I mean, these guys are uber talented, the guys that we attract. I mean,
they're not there to play school, like we talked about. They're not there to play school. So
exactly.
It's like,
baseball's a little bit different than some of the other sports. I mean, we do have guys who are really good students. I mean, we have starters who are like high threes. I mean, they're like finance majors and stuff, but
which is smart if they're going to go to the league. It's
correct,
smart.
but obviously there's also the guys who are just they're not here for school. Yeah. But we do have good kids. I mean, overall they're really really good kids. They're not here for school. So
all right, so you want to talk about hamstrings?
Yeah. I would say for the world of sport, trained at high velocity, so like baseball, sprinting. I mean, any kind of field sport where max velocity sprinting and less so acceleration, but still acceleration is a priority. The paradigm has kind of shifted to how to train hamstrings. Anything done in the weight room is really general and foundational at best. A lot of the traditional training methodologies of training hamstrings are shifting. Nordic hamstring curls, you're familiar with Nordic hamstring curls. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the said gold standard of hamstring training. I think they're important, but I don't think they're the end all be all. So we'll do those a little bit in the fall, but we don't do them much in the spring. So I kind of train slightly more isometric, quasi-isometric, versus like eccentric hamstring training, based on what you see with max velocity sprinting. So with max velocity sprinting, your hamstrings are at full length. So knee pretty much almost fully straight, but slightly bent. And as soon as you contact the ground, it's an extreme, rapid, fast, semi-isometric, semi-eccentric contraction when you hit the ground. So concentric hamstring training is not the best. I think in general it can be very helpful, but we do a lot of like very rapid, quick hamstring work that's done isometrically. So we'll do like hamstring switches or catches, where essentially your back is on a box or a bench, and you're essentially like in a full length. Your on leg is on another bench with your other leg up, and you're switching. So you're kind of mimicking sprinting, but you're landing your heel on the other bench. So you're airborne, and then you switch in the air, and then you're catching yourself with your heel on the bench. So you're getting an extreme, rapid, very intense contraction that's super, super short, right? So it's essentially mimicking what you're going to see in sport. So we'll progress to those. There's ways to add load and add intensity. You can essentially add like a hip thrust. So you're super, super airborne, and then you're coming down, your legs coming down really high and fast, and then you're catching on the box or the bench. So like I said,
So you're catching as your butt's going down in between the gap.
Yes. Yeah. So
and that's what you're trying to stop to try and mimic.
So yeah,
some of that.
your hamstring and glute is essentially breaking your body from free falling.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to keep your body straight. If you're looking at two benches, your back's on the bench, and we want you to get very high. So gravity's going to pull you down hard and fast, and then the back of your heel is accepting all that force, and obviously that goes through your hamstring
and that's mimicking the motion of hitting the ground
of sprinting. Correct. So it's a little bit more specific for sprinting. The best way to train the hamstrings for sprinting is sprinting, right? But we can't do that all the time. We can't do that, on a Monday lift. We're not going to do max velocity sprinting on a Monday lift when we were just on the road for, a series in Georgia, and we had a 5.5 hour bus ride, and we got back at 1 a.m. and we just played 3 straight games in the 95-degree weather, and hey, we got to lift on Monday. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do max velocity sprinting. But there's ways that we can kind of train that a little bit more specifically to kind of attenuate that hamstring issue.
So in January, or when you start your off-season training, or do you start like flying stuff?
So we'll do all of our fly sprinting in the fall.
Okay.
We'll do just like hard start accelerations in the spring, just because of how stressful flying sprints are.
Yep.
So you guys familiar with like what a flying sprint is? So we'll do a fly 10, which is a 10-yard segment of the fastest you can possibly run 10 yards. Okay. So I give the guys an unlimited buildup. So if we're doing it on a football field, I'll set up the timing gates at like the 20, 25 yard line. And then the next timing gate at the 30 or 35. So I'm timing a 10-yard segment, and they'll start all the way like past the back end zone. So they're getting like 20 to 30 yards of a buildup, however they want to build up. And then they're slow. And then by the time they hit that first timing gate, they're at 100% max velocity, and they're trying to hold that through that second timing gate. So it's a 10-yard segment. So it's a true test of how fast can you sprint, true max velocity.
Gotcha.
So I'm eliminating the acceleration component of sprinting. So super hard on the hamstrings. So we'll do that in the fall, but we won't do that in the spring, just because the calendar, honestly, the calendar, it's so short. We get, like I said, 3 to 4 weeks of training before we start practice, and once we start practice, it's game over. It's all ball.
Yep.
And my role is kind of taking a step back. It's still important, but
Your job as a strength coach has to be hard, because if anyone gets injured, it's like
no doubt.
everyone's looking
No
bitch.
doubt. Anytime there's an injury, it's like, damn it. It's like, could I have done something different?
Right.
Like, how is this on me? And obviously stuff happens. I mean,
Right.
we'll have guys sliding into second, and they'll get tagged in the head. Like last year at Texas A&M, our guy, I think he got tagged in the head, and he got a concussion. And I'm just like, damn it.
You're over there. You're like, fuck.
I'm like, what did I do wrong? And it's like, he got hit in the head with a concussion. Or we had a guy, our starting right fielder, he broke his wrist sliding into a wall.
You're over there celebrating. You're like, oh god, it wasn't my fault.
But yeah, it's like part of me is like, okay, it's not a soft tissue, but like, could I have done something better? And I think that's just kind of my personality. I'm just gonna be like always trying to be the best that I can be. But
Which
yeah,
is a good trait.
yeah. Anytime there's an injury, I'm like, damn it, what could I have done? Like, is it me? Like, how can I get better? But yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. I imagine it gets like exponentially harder in season as you're traveling. Like you said, like you go from playing somewhere crazy hot, you know, and then you got to hop in a bus and you ride for 5 hours, or you fly
brutal.
and like.
It's brutal.
How do you keep the kids like in condition, like in travel, and then you get there so they're not just like going cold and just getting.
Yeah, the thing with baseball is like it's such a routine and process oriented sport. Like they know they just have to do their work. Like they'll bitch, they know it sucks, but they just do it because they're just robots and it's just part of the sport. Like a pregame is like 4 hours, just a pregame, plus 3+ hours for a game. So like a game day is so long. So they'll like our hitters will hit an hour before pregame meal, which is 5 hours before the game. They'll do early work hitting. We'll eat pregame meal 4 hours out. We'll stretch 3 hours out, and then we essentially practice up until the game time. So they'll take infield, outfield, which is like 20, 30 minutes of defense. They'll hit for an hour. They'll do more defense. They'll do more base running, and then they go play a game. It's exhausting.
So like there's that whole structure, is that to like just keep them physically prepared and get them ready, or is it like how much that's
I think
the
it's
physical piece?
I think it's just baseball being like so set in their ways of like that's how we've always done it. We got to hit for 2 hours before the game, which is incredibly boring as a support staff because you'll watch and it's just like same thing over and over. But I think it's partly that, and I do think it is important because it's such a fine motor skill sport where you need to feel hitting, you need to feel tossing for our pitchers, you need to feel fielding ground balls every day, or you kind of lose touch. So you got to touch a bat, you got to touch a baseball, you got to field ground balls, and it can be low intensity, right? I mean, easy swings, easy tosses, just kind of flipping. But you have to do that, or you lose touch. If you don't do that for a day or two, you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah. Does like part of your trainings, are you working with some of like those motor skills, like the reflex skill and like the hand eye? Is that like different coaching?
Yeah, it's for us not a lot. Some programs the strength coach is a little bit more involved with some of that stuff. The big thing that I'm involved in is base running. So I do a lot with that in the fall, where I'm kind of getting their technical work in, and I'm helping the coaches with base stealing, base running, because that's a big focus of our game is stealing bases, being fast around the bases. So from a like baseball specific standpoint, I would say that's the number one that I work with. Obviously, I'm interacting with the coaches all the time. Like, hey, this pitcher is having this issue. What do you think? Yeah. Hey, this hitter, can't get into their back hip or whatever. It's like things like that. I'm helping with for sure. But as far as like me really, really coaching on field stuff, not as much. But base running is probably that big one where I help a lot. We're kind of working on the footwork and the technical aspect of being faster on the bases.
So like not just like make you faster in this linear progression, but like the technical side of
correct.
Like making
Yes.
a turn.
Yes. So obviously my world is the physical domain. So I'm working on the speed, the strength, the power, all those physical traits, and then kind of the technical tactical component is where more the sport coaches focus on. So yeah, your first question, how much tactical work do I do? Not a ton. But the big one is the base running, where we're doing reads, we're doing our footwork, how we start, how we run the bases, those kind of things is where I do a little bit more tactical stuff.
Yeah, with the strength conditioning, like in my monkey brain, I see like a pretty direct connection to like, oh yeah, I can hit a ball harder, right?
Yep.
Can you train up pitchers and in the field position players to like throw the ball harder, faster, further?
Yeah, I think for me, training is general, but it's extremely important and can correlate tremendously. So the biggest components of like for a pitcher, for example, some of the biggest correlations to throwing harder, because for me, like I can't get guys to locate pitches. I can't get guys to spin the ball better, maybe a little bit, but that's more the sport coaches. But can I get guys to throw the ball harder? Can I get pitchers to last longer? Can I get hitters to hit the ball harder? Can I get, defenders to sprint faster, accelerate better, field better? Those physical traits is where I really focus on. So kind of going back to the pitching, the biggest correlations to throwing hard are body weight, how high can you jump, and how fast can you sprint. So are you big and strong? Are you explosive? I don't like the word explosive, but are you powerful? And are you fast? So lifting weights can help up to a certain extent, right? So being big and strong is important, but we also need to be fast, right? You can't just be a straight meathead. So we do train hard, but we also sprint, we jump, we lift weights fast, we lift weights slow. It's more than just straight back squatting and bench pressing. But we do those all the time, though, obviously. But those three are kind of the biggest ones that I look at. I keep track of all those all the time. I'm always getting on guys' body weights. One of our guys, last year, he was our main pitcher. He came in as a freshman at 160, and he left I don't remember what he left at, but he touched like 225 when he left as a senior. So he came in 160 pounds and left at 225.
To get all that energy moving forward.
Exactly. So if you are, it's no different than like a shot putter, right? Like if you're big and you can move your body weight well, you're going to most likely throw harder, right? So I can't guarantee it, but more than likely if your technical and mechanical stuff is on point, then you're most likely going to throw harder. So those are the big ones for me that I can control. That's not the pitching motion.
Yeah.
So I say, hey, is our body weight right? Are we jumping high and fast? And can we run fast? Yeah.
What kind of technology do you guys use? Because there's so much now.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a little overwhelming. The biggest one that we use is force plates.
Yeah.
Which is essentially just a really, really fancy and expensive scale. And we'll do a bunch of testing on those. Our biggest one is a counter movement jump. So just think like a vertical. And
then you're testing the force into the ground.
It's literally just a fancy scale. Yeah. So it gives us dozens and dozens and dozens of metrics that how much force you're putting into the ground, when you're putting that force into the ground, how quickly you're putting that force into the ground, how high you're jumping. So we'll use all those metrics to kind of see where you're at. So you'll see guys who are, big and strong and produce a lot of force, but they may not be fast. So think of like the kid who came in yesterday. He's stronger than anybody, but he's not twitchy, right? He's not like a sprinter or like a center fielder would be. So I'll use that data and numbers to kind of individualize training. And I'll use that and I have the norms of the rest of college baseball as well as what pro organizations score and rank those numbers. So they'll use those force plate numbers as well to grade out prospects. And I'll say, hey, like, this is where you're at. This is where, professional organizations see you. We need to work on that. Or you're in a good spot, right? So it helps from am I doing my job? But also, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Yeah. And it can kind of help by saying, hey, like pro organizations, like they're scoring you not very high here. So it's got to be a priority. So kind of going back to the force plates, like that's a really, really big component for us. It's a good way to test where you're at physically without being super invasive. So I'm not asking you to do a full max effort sprint. I'm not asking you to do a full max effort back squat. It's just a counter movement jump. And there's way more tests that we can do on the force plates, but that's the kind of the staple is a counter movement jump. And there's so much research on the counter movement jumps and the force plates. We can do those at minimum once a week. And it's super, super easy. It's not invasive at all. It's not going to kill the guys. But it gives us a lot of insight as to where they're at. And I'll use those numbers kind of twofold. So a performance side. So like, okay, are you strong? Are you fast? Are you twitchy? And also, from like a readiness standpoint. So I can say, okay, let's say our Sunday guy, just pitched 100 pitches and we got to come back on Monday morning and lift. He's not going to be jumping high, right? His number is going to be terrible. So, but that's known, right? I know that. So I can see that in the numbers. But also those numbers can kind of come out for things that I don't know. So if a guy, was up till 2, 3 in the morning playing video games, 2, 3 in the morning, doing homework, he broke up with his girlfriend, he was out of town and, just got back. Like some guys do that. Like if they have an off day, they'll go do stuff. So that kind of helps me to see where guys are at from a short to intermediate term. Like, hey, this guy's super fried. He's fatigued. And then I can go to the guy and be like, hey, what's up? You good? Like, what'd you do last night? Yeah.
Do you use any like biological markers, blood work, anything like that as part of the evaluation program?
Not really. Not really. We'll do like physicals on the guys when they first get here. I know some strength coaches do that. We really don't. Mostly because it's kind of expensive, and we have so many guys. But if the good thing about being at Florida, we have tremendous resources with our hospital right there. And if we do see something that was like, hey, something's going on, we're able to get that right away. So we can get blood work done, or they can see all sorts of docs. But as far as what I do, not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I think I would love to, but after a certain point, too much data is very overwhelming. I mean, the amount of data that we get is crazy.
It's that borderline like analysis paralysis.
100%. 100%. I mean, I find myself doing the same thing because I love to deep dive on the force plate numbers. I love to kind of put those in data visualizations and kind of see how I'm progressing. Like, hey, am I doing my job well? Are the guys getting better? And there's times where I'm like playing on my laptop, at like 10 o'clock at night, which is super late for me. I'm in bed by 8, 9 o'clock every night. But if I'm like deep diving these numbers, I'm like, what am I doing? Like, just relax.
Can you use the force plates as like to teach them how to explode, or to be?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a really good cueing device.
Yeah.
So
but sometimes you just have to feel it. Sometimes
Correct.
like you feel it and you're like, you see the number, you're like, oh, that's what got me a better numbers.
Yep. So there's certain metrics that you can essentially not fudge, but you can manipulate certain metrics by how you cue it. So there's a metric, RSI mod, which is reactive strength index. So it essentially scores how high you jump to how fast you jump. So the output in relation to the input. So can you jump high while also jumping really quick? But it's a metric that's kind of easy to manipulate.
Yep.
So if I say, hey, jump fast, they're going to go, right? But if I cue it, jump as high as you possibly can, they're probably going to have a bigger counter movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So some of those metrics are easy to quote unquote manipulate, but not necessarily only in a negative connotation. That could be a positive connotation as well.
Right.
If a guy is jumping super slow and it just looks bad, like, hey, jump fast. Okay, jump high, jump fast. Don't sacrifice either. But yeah, you can essentially manipulate those and fudge them and say, hey, that was super slow. Jump fast.
Well, if they can feel something and then translate it to a sprint or translate it to speed, like if they're just not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it would mostly correlate to the jump. I don't think there'd be much carryover to like a sprint or a lift because it's just different.
Yep.
It's not as specific, but I can easily manipulate those how I cue. Like another test that we do is our drop jump. So essentially, you're going to stand on a box in front of the force plate. So let's say you're standing on like a 12 or 14 inch box. You're going to drop off the box, land on the force plate, and bounce up and jump as high as you can, as fast as you can. So with that test, I'm testing, it's a little bit more reactive. So you're spending way less time on the ground. But guys don't know always how to do that test. I have to like teach it. It's very learnable.
It's a weird feeling.
It's a weird feeling. Yeah. Doing a counter movement jump is super simple. It's just like, hey, pretend you're trying to dunk a basketball. Stand under the rim and try to dunk. It's easy. Drop jump is a little bit more technical and a learning component. So you'll see guys who are like spending like super long on the ground. They're like on the ground for the kind of standard number of like what's a reactive metric versus like a strength more type reactive metric is like 250 milliseconds. So I try to keep it under that. So like they'll do a jump, and if they're just like landing on the ground and it looks like mush, their body's just like, and then they finally jump, that number is going to be way over 250 milliseconds. They're probably not very reactive. They're probably not a great athlete.
We did some studies. You're pretty sure.
Yeah, you're just not a good athlete. But like your twitchy guys, you'll see they hit the ground and it's like, boom, they're off the ground so fast.
Right.
And you'll see the time that they spend on the ground. You'll see the contraction time. You'll see the jump height. You'll see the rate at which they put force into the ground. You'll see the impulse in which they put into the ground. So the summation of force that they put into the ground throughout that contraction. So like there's a million metrics that we look at. I could bore you to death with all those.
You have nerded out on this.
I have, yes. This is kind of my baby. It's a lot of fun. I just like to see the objective and the numbers. And the guys like it too.
I'm always interested in it because I think like Husker Power started with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was one of the things that Husker Power started with.
OG. OG. That way back then, they were doing some really good stuff.
That was Epley, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Boyd Epley.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was just one of the things I was always interested in.
Yeah.
It's just how that technology, because I know there's ways to use it, and there's probably ways to overanalyze it.
100%. And you'll see kind of the younger age sports science-y type coaches. That's all they care about. It's just like straight numbers. And obviously it ebbs and flows. Like there's time where I'm like, relax. Like they just need to train. They need to practice their sport. They need to be ready to play. I don't need to deep dive too much. And then there's times, like I said, it ebbs and flows.
Well, I think that's a thing in all sports is analytics versus coaching.
Correct.
Right?
100%.
Like you have analytic people who are saying, this is what should happen. You're like, well, I'm a coach and I feel this should happen. And I think there's like a merger. But yeah, it's always a battle.
And every sport's different too. I mean, you think of like a basketball, all you hear about is workload management, right? Like LeBron James taking like whatever amount of games off, however you feel about that. Baseball's so much different, especially in the college setting. Like if I look at force plate numbers and so-and-so's down, I'm not going to be like, hey, this guy can't play. He's going to play. Like our center fielder's going to play. Our right fielder's gonna, like, he's going to play no matter what. It's baseball. It's not football. It's not basketball. Like it's an intense sport in very different ways. Like you can be tired, you can be fatigued and play outfield. You can be tired and play first base. Catcher, maybe not. Pitcher, definitely not. But I mean, it depends on the sport, right? Like workload management is huge for like basketball because their schedule rotates. They play, sometimes 2 games a week, sometimes 3, 4. Depends on college versus pro. But baseball, I mean, in the big leagues, they play. If you're healthy and you're a position player and you're playing well, you're going to play 162 games. You might get a few games off, but you're going to play a lot of games. College baseball for sure. So,
do you have like kind of going back to the metrics and stuff? Do you have numbers that you kind of look at too? I call them like athlete numbers. Like you have these certain metrics that like, hey, you meet these metrics. Like you're an athlete, and we can coach you and like we can teach you to play baseball, but like I can't teach you to be an athlete.
Yeah. I mean, it's the thing with technology and things that aren't specific to the sport is generally our best players are at the top, but you will see guys who are like not the best players and they're meatheads, they're weight room guys, they're just freaks, but they're just not good at their sport. So it is important, but it's important not to get wrapped up in like, well, if I hit this force plate number, I'm going to be good at baseball. No, I will. Nobody in the right mind is going to say that. Right. Because I mean, if you just look at baseball, you can have a terrible body. You can be weak. You can be slow.
There's been some very large first basemen.
100%.
And some very large pitchers.
Yeah, no doubt. No, Bartolo Colon. I'm a Mets fan. Like, look at Bartolo. He's one of the worst bodies I've ever seen. But he's
Cecil Fielder.
No doubt. No doubt. So, I try to be objective and say, hey, like, this is a good target. This will correlate to being better at baseball. This will correlate to throwing harder. This will correlate to higher exit velocities. But it's not a guarantee. So I have norms. The force plate company that we use has norms on essentially not all of college baseball, but NCAA baseball norms for the test and the metrics that we look at. So I put those up for the guys. I say, hey, like you're in the 50th percentile for XYZ metric, or hey, you're in the 20th percentile on this metric that's testing your, I hate the word explosive, your power. Okay. We need to work on that. So I'll use that. And then, like I said before, I'll also use the pro organization numbers and kind of how they score. So pro baseball uses, it's super annoying. I hate it. It's an 80-20 scale. So 20 is like bad. 80 is like elite. And then 50 is average. So that's how they score baseball skill and all sorts of traits. I hate it. Like, why 80-20? I don't get it. But that's like the language of baseball. Is like, so he's a 50 runner, means like he's an average runner. So if you have 80 power, you have like elite big league level power. So I have numbers that say, hey, like your force plate metric is a 20 scale. And it's baseball culture, it's baseball language, so they know what that means. And they appreciate that. They learn that, they see that. But yeah, I'd be like, hey, like these pro orgs, like they see you as a 20 speed, as a 20 jumper, as a 20 whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I want to play at the next level. Something I got to work on. Yeah. So it makes my job way easier. So I don't have to say, hey, like, take my word for it. No, like here's
we've already established the standard.
Here it is.
Like someone else already established the standard. And we're just like
the New York Mets see you as, bad. So
I remember when I told you sucked, the Mets think you suck now too.
exactly.
And the Mets suck, so if they think you suck.
Exactly. And they have billions of dollars to spend. So
Yeah.
you're not getting my money. You have to get their money. So don't take my word for it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. I know you got to get to some things.
I got to do something.
So we don't want to keep you forever. We
Game
appreciate
day,
you coming on, though,
day,
man.
Game
Yeah,
day.
absolutely.
Big game
Been a
day, you
pleasure.
guys. This will probably come out Wednesday, but
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, you guys are playing tonight. You're playing Texas A&M.
Playing Texas A&M. We played them this year. We won 2 out of 3. But that was,
Hopefully, you guys are the Cinderella story this year.
I really hope so. The Gators are never the Cinderella, though. I mean, we're like.
You've
nobody
been here
wants to
too
say-
often to be a Cinderella.
Oral Roberts was an
Yeah.
unbelievable club last year.
Yeah.
They were the Cinderella. I mean, everybody bought into Oral Roberts last year, but the Gators.
But, I mean,
you hate
here-
us. Everybody hates us.
I don't know. They may like it this year. Who knows? You snuck in.
Half the plane I was riding with yesterday was all Gator.
Really,
fans. Yeah,
really.
coming in from
Okay.
Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we definitely have a national brand.
Yeah.
Which helps, but
But you have 8 big teams here. Like, there's no.
huge.
You have 8 big teams.
Huge.
Like, it's going to be one of the most star-studded College World
It'll
Series.
be fun.
ever.
It'll be fun. Yeah, we went out to the fan experience and everything yesterday. There's people everywhere.
Yeah.
The Vols fans showed out. They definitely showed out.
Of course.
You know, Peyton Manning's in town. So,
Peyton
you know.
Manning's in town. Yeah, everybody's here. So yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate you guys helping us out.
That's
Bringing
awesome. I
them.
love you guys. We bring you guys in.
Yeah, I bring my pitchers in here before and after practice to get their lifts in. So
Cool.
It's always a good time. And it's always good to see. I'm glad you guys made it in. Right when I saw they made it in, I sent them a message. I
Yeah.
was like, "You're coming to town."
I'm coming back. Got to get my lifts in.
So
Best gym in town.
I appreciate it.
So
But yeah, we appreciate you coming on. Good luck to the Gators. Hopefully everybody listening learned something so you can be a little less shitty every day.
Yeah.
You know, like, subscribe, share, follow, download, whatever, all the things. And, go Gators. We'll see
Go
you guys
Gators.
next time.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yep.